Good afternoon. My name is Rick Hansen. I'm the lead Democrat on the Technology Committee. I have been in many of the same meetings that Representative Torkelson and Representative Baker have been involved in. And there's been a similar theme throughout all of those meetings, whether those are public meetings or private meetings. And that is frustration, anger, asking about responsibility. And what we have here is a failure of responsibility. We can spend time talking about blame and blaming who did what when. Even your questions were about August, September, October. It is now February. I was in a room with those folks at the end of January where the agencies came forward and pleaded for the money. And they pleaded for $43 million, and we asked them, how much do you really need? Because that's the first question we always ask. How much do you really need? And they provided us with that information. Following up, we need this much money. We need money. We are going to be laying people off. I met with DPS yesterday, and they said they are already losing people because when you have a March 1 deadline, IT professionals are highly valued. And I want to say they're highly valued by the people of Minnesota and companies throughout Minnesota. So folks can get employed very quickly, and people are starting to leave. So if we don't get the dollars to keep them employed, they will start leaving. And when they start leaving, then you will have to hire new people, and you will have to train those people. So the choice that is being made here by focusing on the responsibility, and I heard the governor's taken responsibility. I think the majority's taken responsibility. I'll take responsibility. We all failed. And now is the time for problem solving. We know what the problems are. It's a disaster. But how are we going to solve this? How are we going to step up and take the tough decisions to actually fund this? So the governor's indicated, and I have a bill that I believe the majority has seen, that takes the money from elsewhere in DVS. Now, March 1st, which is also my birthday, is coming very quickly. Too quick, I actually think. But well, how do we do this? I mean, we're not in session, so even introducing that bill, we're going to have to use extraordinary means to move this quickly. So I believe the majority has a conference committee report on transportation. I would ask them to reconstitute that conference committee, hold hearings on the request, and approve the request, considering the money from DVS to provide that funding immediately. Then, in terms of accountability, have meetings weekly with all of you where we can go through progress, and you can report to the people of Minnesota how we're doing. That is the accountability, and that's the transparency that we need. In the long term, the legislature, and I would also say the executive branch, we have not been able to deal with changes in technology. I would call upon us to have a technology conference or summit, not to do anything particularly on MNLARS right now, but to deal with these questions in the future, because as legislators, we are struggling with both science and technology, and we need to have some way of keeping up with the dramatic and rapid changes that are occurring here. How do we, I just gave you 3 problem-solving ideas. We have been meeting on this for months, and we've seen both publicly and privately folks asking for who's to blame, why was this decision made, etc. That's fine, but we are at a point now for problem solving. And that's tough. It's tough. It's not things that we want to do. We do not want to be in this position. But I think Minnesotans expect us to be problem solvers. They expect us to recognize where the problems are, how to fix them, and how to solve them. And we cannot stop action and let the problems get worse. Now, I think you've read some of my comments on these over the last year, over the last 6 months, and I have skepticism as well. But I trust when DPS is telling us that they need the money immediately, that they do. And the check on that is to have public meetings and to ask those questions on progress, on outcomes, to make sure that this is happening. And we have to do this not only for MNLARS, to make sure that The problem pile of car registrations and titles gets reduced, but we eliminate those problem generators that are in the system right now. And ultimately, we have to have a functioning real ID system. So when you stop action on MNLARS, it's going to have impacts on real ID. You're losing people. People walk out the door. How can highly valued employees that can find a job almost anywhere, because IT employees are valued, they start to depart without certainty. So I would ask that we focus on problem solving. What we heard here was not problem solving. It was continuing to focus on the problem. We know there's a problem. We know it's a bad problem. But gosh, we have got to start fixing it.
Can you caucus vote for the Torkelson bill?
I think if it depends on when. If it's a month from now, it's too late. I would ask for it to be quickly. If the Torkelson bill can take money from DVS as the executive has done, I think we could do that very quickly. We could do it Thursday. I would ask that they do that so we don't run into that problem of missing folks. Going around and looking at other agencies, I just think then you're just creating problems elsewhere where you're spending time looking, here's some money, here's some money, here's some money. We know that there's funds there in DPS, and I think we should use them.
How much money is there in DVS, and what is it? What's it
There
from?
are approximately, there are two different funds, and I think the aggregate is about 20 million.
Would the Torkelson bill not allow your bill? It's not clear to me, this is the first time reading it.
Well, and I hadn't heard the Torkelson, I was listening closely to what he said, and he was talking about other agencies. I would think if those funds are available, again, I would ask if those funds are available, and that's what the executive branch is proposing, let's do it. I mean, if they're there, rather than hunting through every other agency, I don't want to be having a hearing on DNR and environment, and another one in health and human services to find the money. If there's money in DVS right there, let's use it and let's do it quickly. And have that accountability of weekly progress reports to the public.
The money is already in the DVS budget. Why would they, what's stopping them from just taking the 10 million that they say they need urgently right now?
We have to appropriate it. We have to authorize it. We've asked that question. I asked the question, could the LAC do it? I mean, because is there another way, is there any other way that this could be done, and it appears that it requires legislative action.
What's your, I mean, how do you balance the public outrage about how poorly this has been handled and that its budget is, nearing tripling from its original estimate versus, the concern that this could get worse if funding doesn't get out the door within the next week?
I understand outrage. I understand frustration. I have constituents. I have a deputy registrar in my district in South Saint Paul that's been suffering through this. I have proposals bipartisan proposals with Representative Baker and others to try to deal with that. But the immediate needs, I think in a crisis, and if this is a crisis, which I believe it is, we have people who are not able to do both their private business and commerce. We have to move beyond that outrage. We have to move and take that responsibility to take action, and have the consequences. I could be wrong, if the money doesn't solve the problem, or then we have to face the voters this fall. But I think we have to provide the leadership to take that risk, to take them at their word, and to try to solve the problem, and to provide the accountability by having the public transparency to make this happen.
I guess the question is, does DPS, DVS, Minute deserve to be taken at their word after handling this rollout so poorly and not publicly saying, hang on, this isn't ready to be launched?
I think, as was discussed previously, that there have been personnel changes. I continue to be skeptical, but they've made the case here. I am taking them at their word. I realize that's a risk. But I think that's a risk that we have to take. because otherwise the consequence to Minnesotans is too great. Okay. Thanks.